They said the invasion might come in July. It came in June. I was 19. Gefreiter Hans Weber, 352nd Infantry Division, Normandy. Our officers called it the Atlantic Wall, as if the sea itself wore a uniform. But that morning, the sea wore men. Before dawn, we heard the engines, low, endless. Then the guns, like iron doors slamming against the sky. Someone said it was a drill. No one believed him. We were inland from the coast, hidden by hedgerows, thick as stone. They called them bocage, old walls of earth that swallow sound and men. Our job was to hold a crossroads near a nameless hamlet. The beach, Omaha, was closer than my courage. By noon, runners came with scraps of orders and stories of chaos. The Americans had broken through. Others held. It is strange how, in war, hold means both stay and do not break. There were 5 of us. Kurt, who carved pipes from scraps of wood. Fritz, who kept a photo of his sister for luck. Willie, the youngest, who winked when afraid. And Otto, our corporal, who never raised his voice. Me, a carpenter's son with hands that shook when the world grew quiet. By midday, the world refused to be quiet. Mortars stitched the fields. We moved hedge to hedge, bent low, swallowing soil with every breath. At the crossroads stood a shrine, the Virgin Mary, blackened by smoke. Otto touched the stone and said, "Here." We set the gun behind the wall and waited. Shadows moved along the hedges, voices, American. We opened fire. They scattered, answered back, and the shrine stone screamed with ricochets. My rifle jammed. I worked the bolt with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Later, an order came, fall back and delay. Delay what? Time itself was pouring down that road. We crawled through the mud. Willie winked, then fell and didn't rise. Otto pulled me into a ditch. Later, he said. We held until the belts ran dry. Through the hedge I saw faces, young, mud-covered, afraid. Someone shouted a name. Someone's mother had chosen that name. When the rain came, it ran from my cap into my eyes. "Empty," Kurt said, and the word felt like a door closing. Otto sent me left with a rifle and 2 grenades. "Find a flank," he said. "Make them guess." I crawled to a gap in the hedge, a farmyard beyond, a broken cart, frightened chickens. That's when I saw him, an American soldier, wounded, sitting in the mud, no weapon. He leaned back, eyes closed, like someone waiting for a train that would never come. I raised my rifle. Then a chicken hopped onto the cart and looked at him. He laughed, just a breath of sound. He opened his eyes and saw me, not my uniform, me. We stared until the rain hid our faces. I lowered the rifle. He nodded once, stood, and limped away through the hedge. When he disappeared, I crawled back to Otto and the blackened shrine. I said nothing. In war, silence is often the only way to tell the truth. The rain kept falling that night, washing blood and powder into the earth. We had no orders, only silence and smoke. The Americans were pushing inland. Otto said, "We pulled back before dawn." No one argued. The hedgerows looked different in darkness, less like walls, more like graves. Every rustle made me reach for my rifle, and every time I touched it, I remembered the man I didn't shoot. We moved in single file, soaked and half blind. Kurt led us with a map that had dissolved into pulp. The sky kept flickering from artillery somewhere far away. Each flash lit the faces of men who no longer believed in tomorrow. When we reached the orchard, we stopped. The trees were shattered, heavy with unripe apples that fell when the wind changed. Fritz picked one up, bit it, and said it tasted like copper. No one laughed. At the edge of the orchard lay what was left of another company. 5 men, uniforms burned gray, rifles stacked like crosses. Otto whispered a prayer and took a spare water canteen. The rest of us looked anywhere but there. We kept walking until the ground turned to mud. Somewhere ahead, a church bell rang once, then was drowned by the sound of engines. Tanks, ours, we hoped. We crouched, waited, listening. But the rumble moved past, going the other way, retreating. Otto spat into the mud. That means we're alone. We reached a farmhouse before dawn. Roof half gone, door hanging by one hinge. Inside, the air smelled of hay and gun oil. We found bread hard as stone, a lantern, and a wounded boy no older than 16. His uniform was ours, his face pale as wax. He looked up when we entered, eyes wide. "I can't move my leg," he said. Otto knelt beside him. "No medic?" The boy shook his head. We did what we could, tore fabric for a bandage, shared a swallow of water. Then Kurt found the boy's papers. Name, Josef Weber. My breath stopped. Otto looked at me. "Brother?" I nodded. "Cousin," I lied. Josef smiled faintly, not hearing us. He said he'd been at the coast when the Americans landed. A shell had buried him, then dug him back out. He said he couldn't hear in one ear anymore. He asked if we were winning. No one answered. Kurt looked at Otto, and Otto looked at the floor. When daylight came, we heard engines again, this time American, closer. Otto said, "We move." He looked at me, then at Joseph. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I knelt, pressed my hand to the boy's shoulder. His eyes fluttered open. "Will you come back?" he asked. I told him yes, but we both knew that was a lie. We left the farmhouse before sunrise. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy with mist and gunpowder. No one spoke. Behind us, the orchard smoldered. Kurt said it looked like ghosts were walking between the trees. Maybe they were. We followed a dirt road lined with dead cattle and burned carts. The sound of planes came and went like a storm that had forgotten where to land. Every mile we passed another abandoned position, helmets, rifles, the smell of fuel. The front was collapsing, folding in on itself like wet paper. At a crossroads we met 2 soldiers from another unit. Their faces were gray with exhaustion. One said, "St. Lo is gone." "Americans are everywhere," Otto asked. "Where's command?" The man laughed without humor. "Which one?" We rested in a ditch. Fritz took out the photo of his sister again and stared at it for a long time. He said she lived in Dresden. He said when the war was over, he'd build her a piano. Kurt told him to save his promises for something he could carry. They both smiled, tired and hollow. By noon, the mist lifted. We saw a column of civilians, women, children, an old man pushing a cart. They stepped aside when they saw our uniforms. A woman clutched her child tighter and would not meet my eyes. I wanted to tell her we were retreating, not fighting. But I didn't know if that made us better or worse. Further down the road, we passed a destroyed Panzer, half buried in the mud. Inside, the crew still sat, as if waiting for orders. Their faces were black with soot, hands frozen on the levers. Kurt closed the hatch without speaking. That night we reached a small village that looked untouched. A few houses still had windows, and a church bell hung silent in its tower. Otto decided we'd rest there for an hour. We found bread and a single candle in what had been a bakery. It smelled faintly of flour and death. While the others slept, I stood outside. The sky was clear now, full of stars. For the first time since the invasion, I could hear frogs in the marsh. And in that quiet, I thought of the American soldier I spared. Was he alive? Did he tell anyone? Would he remember my face like I remembered his? Otto came to stand beside me. "You're thinking too loud," he said. I told him about the man. He listened, nodded once, and said, "Maybe that's the only thing we did right today." Then he went inside. I stayed until the candle burned out. By the next morning, the map meant nothing. Every road led to smoke, every field to mud. Otto said our regiment no longer existed, not on paper, not in truth. We were ghosts walking home without knowing the way. The sun burned off the mist and revealed how far we had fallen. Columns of Americans moved behind us, cutting off the coast. The sky buzzed with planes. Each one sounded closer than it was, and every time we heard them, we froze like animals. In the afternoon we found an abandoned cart full of bread, already crawling with flies. We ate anyway. Kurt joked it was the best meal he'd had since basic training. No one laughed, but it helped to hear his voice. By evening we reached a forest of thin birches. The trunks glowed white in the fading light, like bones standing upright in rows. We built a small fire beneath the trees, careful to hide the smoke. Fritz said he wanted to go north, toward Caen. Otto shook his head. "Caen is gone," he said. "Everything north is gone." For a while we just listened to the forest breathe. I could hear my heartbeat in the silence, and the sound of boots squelching somewhere far away. Maybe American patrols, maybe other strays like us. In that darkness, everyone sounded the same. When the fire died, we lay on the ground with our rifles across our chests. The stars were sharp enough to cut. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the American soldier's face again, the rain on his helmet, the way he looked back once before vanishing into the hedge. Somewhere near midnight, we heard voices in English, close, steady, confident. Otto motioned for silence. Through the trees, we saw their shapes moving along the path, 5 of them, maybe 6. Kurt raised his rifle. Otto touched his arm. "Not yet," he whispered. The American stopped near the edge of the clearing. One knelt, lit a cigarette, and the glow caught his face. He looked young, younger than Willie had been. I remembered the laugh, the nod, the mercy I had given once. Otto leaned toward me. "If they see us, we're finished," he said. I nodded, but my hands wouldn't move. The rifle felt heavy, almost alive. The patrol turned away, the light from the cigarette fading between the trees. When their footsteps were gone, Kurt exhaled hard and said, "We could have taken them." Otto just stared at the ground. "No," he said. "We've taken enough." The forest went quiet again. Only the wind answered us. By dawn the forest thinned, and we reached open farmland again. The ground was soft, scattered with shell holes and bits of uniform. Otto said we needed water. Kurt pointed toward a farmhouse with a collapsed roof. No smoke, no dogs. We went in cautiously. Inside, everything smelled of damp straw and milk gone sour. A chair was overturned. A child's shoe lay near the hearth. The well still worked. We drank in silence, passing the tin cup between us like a communion. In the barn we found them, 3 French civilians hiding under sacks of grain, 2 women and an old man. When they saw our uniforms, they froze. The older woman began to pray in a whisper. Fritz lowered his rifle immediately. Kurt did not. They could warn the Americans, he said. Otto looked at them, then at us. They're farmers, he said quietly. They have no radios. No weapons. Kurt's jaw tightened. He had lost too many friends to mercy. The old man raised his hands, trembling. He said something in French I couldn't understand. The younger woman held his arm, tears streaking her face. She was maybe 20. Her eyes met mine for a second, wide, terrified, human. Otto made his decision. "We leave them," he said. "We take what we need and move." Kurt stepped closer, rifle still in hand. "They'll tell them where we went." Otto didn't blink. "They'll do it anyway if we shoot them." No one moved. The only sound was the drip of water from the roof and the distant thump of artillery. Finally, Kurt lowered his weapon. He turned, kicked a bucket across the floor, and stormed out into the yard. The old man fell to his knees, muttering thanks we couldn't understand. Otto knelt too, lifted one of the sacks, and found potatoes beneath. He filled his pack, left a few behind. Fritz slipped a ration of bread onto the table. As we walked away, I looked back. The younger woman was still watching from the doorway. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just stared. For the rest of the war, I'd remember that look more than any battle. When we were clear of the house, Otto said softly, "Every time we choose, we lose something." Kurt spat into the dirt. "Then stop choosing," he said. No one answered. We just kept walking. We moved through open country most of that day. The air smelled of rain and gun oil. Somewhere ahead, artillery boomed like an angry heartbeat. Otto said the line was gone, that we were walking through no one's land now. The roads were filled with wreckage, trucks, helmets, and the bodies of horses bloated in the heat. Flies moved in clouds. No birds sang anymore. Kurt muttered that even God had gone quiet. By afternoon, the land began to rise. We followed a narrow road lined with poplars and came to a crossroads choked with debris. A burned jeep lay on its side, its tires melted into the dirt. Fritz stopped, crouched, and pointed. Tracks, fresh. American boots, moving east. Otto raised his hand. "We turned south," he said. But before we moved, an engine coughed somewhere beyond the trees. Voices followed, English, steady, confident. They were close. We scattered behind the ditch, hearts pounding. Through the leaves I saw them, 6, maybe 7 Americans, setting up a machine gun at the junction. One carried a radio, another laughed. The sound felt almost human, like something from before all this. Otto's eyes met mine. We had a choice, sneak away or strike first. Kurt didn't wait for an order. He fired. The shot cracked like thunder. One of the Americans fell. The others dove for cover, shouting. Otto swore, shouted for smoke. Fritz fumbled for a grenade. The ditch erupted in noise, rifles, shouts, the stutter of their gun tearing the hedge apart. Mud flew into my mouth. I couldn't see. Kurt kept firing until the belt ran dry. Then silence, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. Otto crawled to him, shaking his shoulder. Kurt didn't move. A dark hole bloomed in his chest, where the bullet had found him. The firing stopped. We waited, breathless. Then we heard the Americans again, closer, moving cautiously, calling to each other. Otto looked at me and whispered, "Run." He pulled Fritz up by his collar, and we bolted through the wheat field behind us. Bullets followed, snapping through the stalks. Fritz stumbled, dropped his pack, kept running. My lungs burned. We didn't stop until the sound of shouting faded into the wind. When we finally fell to the ground, Otto's face was gray with mud and sweat. He said nothing for a long time. Then he whispered, "Kurt's gone." I nodded. We both knew he wasn't the only one we had lost. That night, as we hid in a drainage ditch, Fritz asked what would happen if we were captured. Otto said, "Then maybe the war ends for us." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We moved at night now. The fields were safer than the roads. Every distant sound could be a patrol, or our own ghosts walking behind us. Otto led the way, compass in hand, though I'm sure he didn't trust it. Fritz followed close, limping slightly from the last sprint. He had stopped speaking since Kurt died. The three of us were like shadows that had forgotten their owners. We reached a small river at dawn. It smelled of algae and diesel. Otto knelt, cupped his hands, and drank. He said we'd follow it south, maybe reach friendly lines, maybe not. He laughed softly, as if the word friendly had lost its meaning. Along the bank we found a crashed glider, one of the Allied transports. Its wings were sheared by trees, fuselage cracked open like an egg. Inside were parachutes tangled in roots, and one body still strapped in the seat. He was young, barely 20, face calm, as if he'd fallen asleep. Fritz crossed himself. Otto closed the man's eyes. We took nothing. There was nothing left to take. By mid-morning the sun was high and cruel. The smell of death hung over the fields like fog. We stopped in the shadow of an apple tree. Fritz finally spoke. He said, "Do you think anyone will remember us?" Otto stared at the dirt. "Someone always remembers," he said, "but never the truth." Later, we reached another farm, deserted, except for a cow still tethered in the yard. Its ribs showed through its skin. Fritz untied it, and it wandered into the field without looking back. Freedom doesn't mean much when you don't know where to go. That night, the sky burned orange to the north. Otto said it was Caen, the city we'd once defended. He said the British were shelling it to dust. We watched the glow for a long time. Fritz asked if we should keep fighting when we found our lines again. Otto didn't answer. He just looked at me and said, "When this ends, if it ever ends, you tell someone what it was like." Not the victories, the waiting, the hunger, the fear. Tell them what it does to men. I said I would. But even then, I think he knew I wouldn't find the words. That night, I dreamed of the man I didn't shoot. He was standing in a field of broken trees, holding his rifle upside down and asking me why I was still carrying mine. By the third day, hunger spoke louder than orders. We had a handful of bread left, damp and moldy. Fritz tore it in 3 pieces and said, "Equal shares." Otto shook his head. "You eat. You need it more." Fritz pushed it back. "Then none of us will." So we threw the bread into the river. It floated away like something we'd never deserved. We followed a dirt lane bordered by hedges, our boots leaving prints that filled with water. Every step sounded like a question with no answer. By evening, we found a barn, half burned, still standing. Inside, straw covered the floor, and rain dripped through the rafters. We sat in a circle, too tired to speak. Otto finally said, "We can't keep running." He looked at me. "They'll surround us soon. Best to find a white cloth before they find us." Fritz stared at him, eyes wide. "Surrender? They'll shoot us." Otto shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll feed us." No one argued. That night I heard Fritz crying quietly into his sleeve. He said he dreamed of Dresden, of bells and clean clothes and his sister's laughter. I told him we'd hear bells again some day. Even as I said it, I didn't believe it. At dawn we heard boots outside, steady, purposeful. Otto motioned for silence. We crouched behind the hay bales as the door creaked open. Two American soldiers stepped in, rifles raised. They hadn't seen us yet. Fritz's hand went to his weapon. Otto grabbed his wrist. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The rain, the breath, the world. Then Otto stood, hands up. "Don't shoot!" he shouted. His voice echoed through the barn like something breaking. The Americans froze. One shouted back, nervous, finger on the trigger. I stood too, raised my arms. Fritz hesitated, then did the same. They rushed us, shouting. One hit Otto in the shoulder with the butt of his rifle, forcing him to the ground. Another tore the pistol from Fritz's belt. The moment passed in a blur of noise and fear. Then it was over. We were prisoners. Outside, the world looked the same. Gray sky, muddy fields, the smell of smoke and rain. But something inside me shifted. For the first time since the invasion, I wasn't running anymore. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. They tied our hands with telephone wire. It wasn't cruel, just necessary. The Americans looked young, sunburned, and too tired to hate us. One of them offered Otto a cigarette. Otto nodded but didn't take it. We were marched along a dirt road that smelled of rain and gasoline. On both sides lay wreckage, tanks half buried, rifles snapped like sticks. Somewhere a dog barked, and for a second it sounded like home. Fritz limped beside me, whispering in German under his breath. He said he'd never seen the ocean before the invasion. Now he'd seen too much of it. I told him to save his breath. He smiled weakly. At midday we passed a column of American wounded coming the other way. Bandages, stretchers, faces gray with pain. One of them stared at me and nodded. I wanted to say something, but my mouth felt full of dust. When the guards stopped for water, they let us sit. A corporal with freckles and a wedding ring handed me a tin cup. His accent was southern. He said, "Drink, pal. It's over for you now." His voice wasn't mocking. It almost sounded kind. Otto looked at me. "Remember that," he said softly. "The war is over when someone lets you drink." That evening we reached a field surrounded by barbed wire, an improvised camp. They gave us blankets, canned meat, and silence. The guards kept their distance, watching but not unkindly. When darkness came, someone on their side played a harmonica. The tune drifted through the wire, thin and lonely. Fritz whispered, "It sounds like home." Otto shook his head. "No," he said, "it sounds like mercy." I lay on the ground, staring at the stars through the wire. They looked the same as they had over Normandy, the same as before everything. I thought of the man I hadn't shot, the one who laughed in the rain. For the first time I wondered if he was the one guarding me now. Sleep came slowly, soft as surrender. I came home in the spring of '46. The war had ended months earlier, but the world still smelled of smoke. My mother didn't recognize me at first. I was thinner, quieter. She said, "You're safe now." I wanted to believe her. I worked again with wood. The sound of the saw was different from gunfire, but sometimes it fooled me. Every night I washed my hands twice, as if sawdust could hide the dirt of France. Otto never returned. He died in the camp hospital that winter. Fritz made it home to Dresden. He wrote once before the city burned again. After that, Only silence. Years passed. The world built monuments and new armies. I built tables and chairs. People said it was good work, sturdy, honest. But every time I planned a board, I thought of the hedge, the farmyard, the rain. When I married, I told my wife I had been a carpenter's apprentice during the war. She never asked questions, and I never corrected her. We had a son, then a grandson. Sometimes he'd sit at my bench and ask about the old days. I told him the truth that fits in a child's heart. Only later did I learn there is no version of truth small enough to stay hidden forever. On my 90th birthday, he brought me a computer. He said I could see the world on it. I typed the words Normandy 1944 and waited. Photographs appeared, beaches, soldiers, faces, and in one of them I saw a man standing beside a ruined cart, helmet tilted back, smiling in the rain. He looked older than I remembered, but it was him, the man I didn't shoot. I stared at that picture until the screen dimmed. So many years, and the war still found ways to look back. Sometimes at night, I hear rain on the roof and imagine he hears it too, wherever he is. Two old men listening to the same storm. That is all that remains of the war now. Not victory, not defeat, just the sound of rain and the memory of mercy.